So, as I was introduced, my name is Tania Johnston, and I'm joining you from Alberta. I'm in Edmonton. I'm originally a Canadian, as you can tell by my accent. I spent, of the last 15 years, I've spent 10 of them in Australia teaching and working as an intensive care paramedic there. And I currently still teach by distance. I've got a very nice job working for CSU, working remotely. And I work as an advanced care paramedic here for Alberta Health Services. So a little bit of background about our university. So CSU was established in 1989. Like I said, there's been lots of regional campuses. And the way our university is organized is it's really focused on educating for the profession. So, nursing, paramedicine, law, engineering, those, we've got physio, I guess multiple professions. And CSU is well known in Australia for having the first paramedic degree program. And I feel pretty confident to say the first paramedic degree program in the world. So they partnered with New South Wales Ambulance in 1994 and transitioned from tertiary, from being educated with the ambulance service to being educated at the university. So there's a long history of CSU excelling in long distance education. And some of you may have taken or may know people who have taken the original paramedic. I don't know if it was an associate degree back then, but a paramedic degree that was offered online, back in the day, I would say sort of in the 90s and 2000s. That doesn't, in that form, doesn't exist anymore. CSU also had a campus in Ontario from 2004 to 2015, and that primarily focused on education. Okay, so let's talk about what is relevant for those of you who are here today. There's a few degrees that CSU offers, and we will focus primarily today on the Masters of Critical Care Paramedicine. But just for a little bit of context, our university, like a number of the universities in Australia, has a lot of students. So Rob can correct me, but I believe we have about 3,000 students all in across all of our courses in varying levels of study. So if you want to be a paramedic in Australia right now, the entry to practice is the bachelor degree. And in Australia, our bachelor degrees are 3 years, which of course would be different than the Canadian bachelor, which would be 4 years. They follow more of the UK style of bachelor degrees or the UK model. So whether you're a Bachelor of Nursing, a Bachelor of Paramedicine, they're all 3-year undergraduate degrees. And that's what you would take if you want to become an entry to practice paramedic in Australia now. And that's been a bit of a journey, and we're pretty much there now. So that would be the same as our primary care paramedics here in Canada, which of course is a variety of education, depending on which province you're from, length of education. But that would be about the equivalent of the entry to practice. There is another year that the Australian paramedics can take, which is called an honours year, which is primarily focused on, well, is all focused on research, and that will give them their 4th year. So I'll come back to that in a moment. We also offer for the nurses in Australia, we offer what's called a graduate diploma in critical care paramedicine. So this is a bridging degree or a transition degree for experienced RNs in Australia who want to become a paramedic. So they study online and then they do a number of face-to-face clinicals and do a practicum as well. And then the one that most of you will be interested in today would be the Masters of Critical Care Paramedicine. So this Masters of Paramedicine is 1.5 years of education if you were to do it full time, which is the same as any master's degree that I'm familiar with, and certainly the ones in Canada is the equivalent of 1.5 years of education. And we will talk about these options to what's called articulate with different levels of certificates or diplomas out of that master's degree, because that's something that can be a little bit confusing. So our students at CSU study either face-to-face in Bathurst or Port Macquarie, or we have about 1/3 of our students who study by distance, and then all of our master's students study by distance. So today we have about 100 Canadian paramedics studying across the bachelor and mostly the Masters of Critical Care. It might even be as high as 120 now, just to give you some context of how many folks are studying by distance with us right now. So I thought it would be useful to do a little bit of a comparison. Again, because our systems are different, it can be a little bit challenging to get your head around what it is that an Australian university is offering you compared to what your context in Canada is. And these are just my notes to try to make some sense of it. So I've already mentioned the primary care paramedic in Canada. We may have some PCPs who are on the line here. So depending on which province you're in, it all varies anywhere from, maybe a 6-month course or a 1-year course or a 2-year course, I believe, is the diploma in Ontario. So varies across the country. And the equivalent to that would be what's called just a paramedic or a P1 paramedic or an ambulance paramedic in Tasmania. We have all different types of terms for that in Australia, but that Bachelor of Paramedicine is the 3-year entry to practice. So you can see there's some differences there. And then the advanced care paramedic level, which I imagine probably most people on the line are, typically a 2-year diploma or advanced diploma, depending on where in Canada you are. And we are starting to see some undergraduate bachelor degrees come into Canada in various ways. And I'm sure if you're here interested in that, you've been paying attention to those developments. The equivalent in Australia, if you want to be what we call in Canada an advanced care paramedic, then you need to become what's called, there's a number of terms, don't you love paramedicine? Intensive care, critical care, mobile intensive care. Australia has a number of different terms for it, but it's essentially the same as an advanced care paramedic here in Canada. And in order to do that, you have to have had your undergraduate degree, then you go get some experience, then you come back to university, and you take what's called postgraduate education, meaning you've graduated from your bachelor already, and now you take postgraduate education. And at minimum, that you take what's called a graduate diploma, which is a 1-year full-time education. And then you would be skill level wise, knowledge and skill level wise, essentially equivalent to an ACP here. And then you can continue on and finish your master's degree with another half year of study. So graduate diploma, part of a master's degree suite of courses in order to become the equivalent of an ACP. And then just like in Canada, where we have specialist roles, which of course vary from province to province, whether you're a flight paramedic or a CCP, depending on where you are, we have all sorts of education in Canada, whether it's in-house training done at a base hospital, maybe the Stars Academy, maybe you're taking courses overseas or in America. It's the same thing in Australia. There are specialist roles, and the education for those can vary as well. And that is just in flux right now to see some big changes. Okay, so let's get back to the Australian degrees. When we first started offering an opportunity for Canadian ACPs to study with us, which was about, I want to say 6 years ago now, we started with a bridging degree. And you might be familiar with some of your colleagues or friends who have taken what's called the bridging degree. So advanced care paramedics could go into the Bachelor of Paramedicine and were given 2 years credit for being an ACP from an accredited course, and then did that 3rd year with us. So they studied online and they did the equivalent of 1 year of education, which was 8 subjects, we call them, and then came out with a 3-year Bachelor of Paramedicine. So that is, again, what most people were doing for a number of years until last year when we made a change. So they jumped in these subjects alongside our undergraduate students, didn't have any travel requirements, and then came out with a Bachelor of Paramedicine. We called that a bridging degree. So why would they study this Bachelor of Paramedicine? Well, back when we started this was the only option available to ACPs. We were just figuring things out, and it was determined to be the best fit. What we see now is because ACPs can go into our Masters of Paramedicine, what we find is fewer and fewer ACPs who want a bachelor degree. So now the ones that we see taking the bachelor degree are those ones who say in Canada, they're interested in, say, for example, taking a domestic course like medicine, but then a 3-year degree typically isn't enough because you take your 3-year bachelor and you go to your medicine program in Canada and you say, I want to apply to medicine. And they say, well, you need 4 years. You need a 4-year degree, or you need at least 2 years full-time education recently. I don't know, I'm not up on all that, but this is what I hear from folks who want to apply to medicine. So we do have some people, though, have done their homework and said, no, what I want is I want my bridging degree that's at a bachelor level, and then I want to do my 4th year as an honors year. So we have a couple people doing that right now. So then they come out with a 4-year bachelor degree. And that 4th year is a research year. So they learn all about research and they do a research project with a supervisor. And in red there, you can see the type of subjects that these folks have been studying. So if you're interested in that pathway, then the Bachelor of Paramedicine, probably with honors, is for you. Or if all you want is, I want to be able to say I have a Bachelor of Paramedicine, then the bridging degree is probably for you. And it's 8 subjects. Now, the Master of Critical Care Paramedicine is where we're seeing most students now. And when we made the change, I think it was the beginning of last year, a number of students who were in the Bachelor actually stopped studying the Bachelor and switched into the Master of Critical Care Paramedicine. So if you Google Master of Critical Care Paramedicine Australia, this is the page that comes up. And what I just wanted to highlight for you is that the Master of Critical Care Paramedicine, if you look at the bottom, is inclusive of those two other courses I mentioned, the graduate certificate and the graduate diploma. So those are all nested under the master. So the graduate certificate comes first, then there's the graduate diploma, and then there's the full master's. And they're all part of the same course, which for Canadians is hard to understand because that's not how we typically do things. Okay, so what is it? The Masters of Critical Care Paramedicine is aimed at advanced care paramedics and CCPs or paramedics with flight experience, so flight paramedics. And our applicants from Canada apply at that graduate diploma level. Now, this is the grad diploma is what I was saying, that the ACP equivalents are what they take in Australia. So for the Canadians, that's the point where you apply and get into the course. And I'll tell you in a moment why that doesn't matter. You're still going to be able to take the master's degree. Now, we offer a credit package. So there is, at that grad dip level, there are 8 different subjects, and one of those ACPs and CCPs get advanced credit for, and that's the skills course. So in that subject, I should say subject, not course, in that subject, which is called APS 505, you learn all of, intubation, needle decompression, IO, use of pumps, FONA, all those sorts of things, which of course our ACPs have already learned and are able to do as part of their skill set. So we've made the case that any ACP that applies to this course should get advanced credit for that subject. And that's good because that subject involves actually being in Australia for the practical component. So that's the reason that the students who get into this course don't have to travel to Australia, because you actually get credit for the subject that would involve travel if you didn't have credit. Now, once you're in the graduate diploma level, then, and you've taken 1 or 2 subjects, I think it's 2 subjects, Rob can confirm that in a moment, then, and you demonstrate that you're passing and everything's going good, then you fill out a form and say, I want to formally transfer into the full master's degree. And the reason we do that is because those that know that provide all of the guidance for Australian education from the government say that unless you have a Bachelor of Paramedicine, you're not actually allowed to apply directly into a master's, but you can apply into a graduate diploma level with your clinical experience and your education. So it's an administrative process. So a full master's degree is 12 subjects total. That's what a normal master's is. So anybody who wants to go in and take a master's degree, it would take the equivalent of 12 subjects. You already get credit for 1, so that leaves 11 subjects then that you would have to study for a full master's. The question that comes up, and what it makes a lot of people nervous, is that idea about having to do research, because they say, oh, I hear that in order to have a master's degree, I have to engage in research. And to a point, that is true. So anyone who takes a master's degree has to learn about research. And like Tara said, she learned about research in her studies. But you have an option. So you can either learn about research in one of the research subjects and then go on and do a research project, like Tara did hers in the air ambulance environment, or you can say, I want to take my research subject and then I want to take 3 electives. And you can choose other subjects to take and not actually do a research project. So you do have some options there on how you want to do your studies. Now, I want to point out that if you are online and you are listening to this and you are a flight paramedic or a recognized CCP in your province, so say you're from Ontario and you're a CCP, or in Alberta, we don't have CCPs, but you're a flight paramedic with 1 year of flight experience, then once you get to that higher, those last courses in your master's level, and you elect to go with taking elective subjects, you can actually get credit for a second subject, and that's APS 510. And that subject fittingly is an air ambulance retrieval subject. So you can see the fit there. So once you get to that point, you can ask for additional credit, and then you wouldn't have to take that. So if you're a CCP or a flight paramedic, you actually only have to take 10 subjects to attain your master's degree. there's a lot of information in this. So I appreciate that it's a lot to take in. So these are the type of subjects that you would take at that master's level. So we have a foundation subject, which is focused all on things like critical thinking, dealing with change, leadership and leadership styles. What else is in there? Change management, emotional intelligence, all those foundational aspects of being a critical care paramedic that you bring to the job that don't actually involve, performing skills. So that's your first subject. And then we also have a pediatric maternal subject, which is one of your first subjects that you take. And that's pretty self-explanatory what you're taking there. We have a cardiac focused one, a medical emergencies one. The medical emergencies are things that would involve, learning, layering on things like learning about blood gases as an example. A trauma subject, which was what Rob was teaching. We have a respiratory one, which is focused on all your respiratory and airway management, vents, RSI, all that good stuff. All of our students, as of today, and I don't know if that's going to change, but all of the students that study with us have to take an Indigenous Studies course. It doesn't matter, or subject, it doesn't matter which course you're in, everyone has to take one. And it's, full disclosure, it's an Australian Indigenous Studies subject, but my understanding is that people have been doing their assignments based on Canadian First Nations content. Then, like I said, there's a research component, at least one subject, and a project, or one subject, and then you have your elective options. So this is just to give you a picture of what it looks like. And if you Google Masters of Critical Care Paramedicine CSU, then you'll see all the details about these.
I'll pop the link in the chat, Tania.
Oh, thanks, Rob. Appreciate that.
No worries.
So we have, are you happy for me to describe this, Rob, or did you want to talk about the articulated set? Keep going. Okay.
No, you go for it.
They probably like your accent better, but I'll keep going. So as I said, people in Canada, people want the master's degree because that's what's recognized in Canada. That's what we're used to. You apply, if you see in the middle, at the graduate diploma level to get in, and then you fill out the form to officially join the master's. But we have what's called an articulated set, which is a bit of a unique thing. And I think with my experience being a paramedic and working and knowing paramedics for so many years, sometimes we have really busy lives and really busy work schedules, and we can't necessarily get it all done at once. So what you can actually do is you can take the first 4 subjects, none of which involve the one that you got credit for, and you can actually exit the university and graduate what's called a graduate certificate in critical care paramedicine. So you get a piece of paper that says, I went to Charles Sturt University and I have a graduate certificate in critical care paramedicine. You can do the same thing at the second level, which is those other 4 subjects, which you'd have to do 3. And you can come out with a graduate diploma of critical care paramedicine, which is where a lot of our Australian students, like I said, that's what they need to be like an ACP. So that's a lot of them, that's where they exit. And then you can come back and then you can finish off the master's. You don't have to do it this way, but it is sometimes nice to know that if you have life events or you're busy or you're off for whatever reason, that you have exit points and then you can easily just pop back in and continue your studies. So you can see how the master's is the equivalent of 4 plus 4 plus 4. It brings you the 12. So how does it work? Well, the one problem we have is that the Australian summer is the Canadian winter and vice versa. So unfortunately, the timing for study doesn't quite line up with our summers. Well, it doesn't line up at all with our summers. That's a bit of a problem. But otherwise, there are 2 sessions of study. So you start in February or early March, depending on the timing, and it's a 16-week session, which is our session 1. So our next intake would be for students who are starting in sort of late February, early March. And then session 2 starts in July, right smack dab in the middle of summer vacation, and takes us through October, sort of Thanksgiving-ish. And then 3rd session is when everyone is off, which is all the way through the Christmas period. And that's when the Aussies are enjoying their summer and on the beach. The online LMS or learning management system we use is called Brightspace. So if you've used that before, or maybe you've used Blackboard, which is similar, then you get an idea of what it's like. So the education that you receive or participate in is scheduled. So we have our 16 weeks and there's a week-to-week schedule for every subject that you take. And most people take 1 or 2 at a time. And so there's like week 1, we're doing this topic, week 2, we're doing this topic. And then twice during that session, there will be an assessment due. There'll also be weekly tutorials that are online tutorials that someone like Rob or myself or maybe in the future Tara is delivering, but everything is recorded for you. So if you're working, you're on shift, the time zones don't line up, then that's totally fine. And you can watch anything recorded online. The only thing that has a hard, fast date are the assessment items. Well, of course, you can always get an extension on them, but there's always a due date for those 2 assessment items. And that's how we progress through our study. The assessment requirements are all something you can accomplish while you're online. Right now, they're primarily written assessments, whether it's case studies or you're writing up an essay and then doing like a recorded presentation. And I know we're in flux a little bit with that. Maybe starting next year, there might be some more do sort of like this, on Teams, do a presentation and then answer some questions with your lecturer or your colleagues or something like that. I don't know. We'll figure that out. AI is messing with all of us. Like I said, most people are studying 1 to 2 subjects at a time, and your lecturers are all in Australia, except me, who does it from here. Now, the good news for you is although education is expensive, we all know that, CSU offers international paramedic students, specifically paramedic students, an internal scholarship. So you don't need to apply for it, but when you apply and you identify yourself as an international student from Canada, then that is applied to your tuition. These numbers sort of flux a little bit year to year, and it all depends on the exchange rate, but you're paying approximately, say, $2,200, $2,300 per subject Canadian. So you can do the math on that. If you need to do 10, your degree is about $22,000 by the time you're done all of it. You pay as you go. So you study a subject, you pay for that one. You don't pay for like a whole year. You just pay for the ones you study. So I've just done some math here to give you an idea of what the costs are. The textbooks aren't included, but we use Tintinelli as our textbook, and there's a free e-version that you can get through the library. So typically, textbooks aren't a burden. You don't actually have to pay for anything there. And I think there's an additional student fee. I don't actually know this for sure, but someone told me it's about $400. I don't know what that's for, but somebody knows. So if you were to apply, of course, you would, been speaking with Austrec about them helping you through this process. So they would help facilitate your application. We do have an online application portal as well for if you just want to do a little bit of research on your own. And what I really want to point out to you is that you need to have an advanced care diploma from an accredited ACP course, which I think almost all of them in Canada are CMA accredited now, or CA accredited. So you need to have your diploma and your transcript. So that transcript either needs to be sent directly to the university, or as was presented earlier, it needs to be authorized, or what do you call that? Whatever they call that, where they stamp it and say that this is a true authorized copy. And that's where Austrec was saying that they can help you do that. Stamped is verified, it says it right on the screen. You also have to have a year of experience as an ACP or CCP. So you need to prove that from your employer. We don't need all sorts of details. We just need something that Rob actually would be the one that looks at that says you have a year experience. And that's to make sure that you qualify for the credit for the skill subject and as well as the flight subject as well. So hard to say that you get advanced credit if you literally just graduated and you've never done an RSI or you've never done an intubation, that sort of thing. If you're a new grad, you've just graduated, then you still can gain entry to the course. And then before you graduate, then you just need to demonstrate that 1 year experience to make sure that you've had that ACP experience. And if your name's different, then you just might need to show some evidence of your name change because your documents might be in a different name. When you apply or when you work with Austrec to apply, they'll make sure that you indicate that you are looking for that credit to those subjects that I mentioned. So that takes me to the end of the presentation. I've just popped up some information there, including Lisa Clegg. She is our discipline lead for these postgraduate courses. She couldn't be with us today, but just some email addresses there. And then there's some general inquiries if there isn't someone specific you want to speak to.